Ulonga tabati yada tó yẹ kó máa da ifá. Inú tó yẹ kó jẹun ló fi bí pa. Ọba tálá, ọba takuntakun. Ṣàngó, Èṣù, Ògún, Ọya, Ọ̀ṣun. Kí ni ṣẹ̀ṣe tán ṣe nílé yìí o? Ó jẹ́ lọ jára rẹ̀.
Alafia, peace and blessings, peace and blessings. Welcome to another episode of the African Spirituality Experience. I'm your host, Orisha Gbemi, and today we're back with another phenomenal episode with another phenomenal guest, man. The first time we did it, it was epic, and I wouldn't expect anything less today, family. So with that, I wanted to give a strong welcome and appreciation and salute to Brother Bdell 1014. Peace and blessings, brother. How you doing, family?
How you doing? Salute to your platform. And everybody that's a part of your tribe. Salute to everybody. Salute.
I appreciate it, man. And salute to you and salute to your tribe because they've been coming over here, you know what I'm saying, clicking up, linking up, showing love and support. The comments, you know what I'm saying? Like everybody been showing nothing but love. There's been a few stragglers coming with the BS, but I've been handling that accordingly. We don't get that too much energy or light, but we definitely appreciate all the ones coming with the light, coming with, you know, the positive feedback, coming with just the love and support, man. And you know, for some I've seen was a common one was like, yo, Brother Bdell is a breath of fresh air. So I'm like, yes, sir, I agree. You know what I mean? Because there's so many things that is right about the work, you know what I'm saying, that you're doing and so many other brothers, you know what I mean? So it's like, I want to focus on that versus the wrong because I had to share with somebody yesterday, I think. It's like, there's enough division going on in the world. So what we're not going to do is have any division going on here. We're going to keep it united. We stand, divided, we fall. You know, we're going to roll till the wheels fall off. So that's how we're going to do it in these Ashe streets.
Most definitely.
Yes, sir. So with that, bro, you just dropped the bomb. I think it was like Thursday, Friday. I don't know what day it was. A few days ago. The shift. So I got a chance to dig into that one, and I really wanted to kind of pick up, you know, where you left off in regards to not just the end times and the reset, but also with a lot of these landmarks or megaliths that are really, really crucial or critical locations for the planet Earth. One of the things that I saw that you went deep into was Mount Shasta and how that's kind of like the chakra of, you know what I mean, of the planet. So I've heard a lot about a lot of extraterrestrial activity that's going on around Mount Shasta as well. I've heard there's been a lot of that. And then also, of course, the people who have the experiences where maybe they teleport, they astral project, or they have visitations from, you know, spiritual beings, etc. So can you kind of dig into some of the significance of Mount Shasta and how these historical and, you know, landmarks play a major role in what we're seeing during this great shift in this reset?
Well, the Seamount axle is also in convergence with Mount Shasta. Now, Mount Shasta is the embodiment of the root chakra of planet Earth. So that means that as far as like the Kundalini awakening, it is acclimated and corresponding to the genetic format of those who's tapped into the carbonatic energies that's hitting the planet. So as we were talking about in the last interview, we were talking about those neutrinos. So those neutrinos is able to alchemize themselves through the solar flares. So when those solar flares hit, it gives a piezoelectrical frequency to that root chakra. So also the Mount Axle, that is where the underground volcano is at. And we all know that the volcanoes are basically the pimples of planet Earth. And they found a whole bunch of eggs there that comes from a different species. Because one thing you got to understand about, you know, there's different layer systems when it comes to Hollow Earth, because it takes you to a different dimensional reality, but it's not only subjected to, you know, mind science technology, it's also acclimated to different ecosystems that's inside the planet Earth that has different bodies of water. Because one thing you got to understand about how everything that was constructed in the inception of time, everything in the beginning points of creation started with the photon hydrogen atom, because the photon hydrogen atom creates electrons, electrons create elements, and elements create molecules, and molecules create organs, and organs create organ systems. And those organ systems have a different ecosystem that is acclimated to that ecological system, whatever, you know, as far as like geographical areas inside Earth, or they got different bodies of water. So the same thing actually translates in real time when you're talking about these energy points that sits at the root chakra where Mount Shasta is at, right? So that means that, like I said, it's, you know, it all corresponds with, you know, Hollow Earth. It all corresponds with the Kundalini circle, because we are in the 9 year, and the 9 year is the embodiment of a snake year. So that means that the Kundalini awakening is going to start where Mount Shasta is and where the Seamount axle right on the demarcation line of Oregon and California, right? So when those neutrinos is coming in, that is activating planet Earth. So like I said, it corresponds with the human body. So that means that we're supposed to not overspill our cup of Hermes. Keep that cup full, right? Because sexual fluid in itself is the cosmic fuel to activate the Merkaba to where you're able to escape the Metatronic overlay.
Woo. Yeah, that okay. You just wrote a whole damn book with that response, but now wait,
and I forgot another thing. You also had the black sun in that geographical area in that time of 2017 when they said they had the solar eclipse, because that was a judgment eclipse, and that judgment eclipse is what created the ancient Alp symbol, what is also associated with the anarchy symbol and the sigil of the Antichrist. So that means that the reset corresponds with the judgment that starts at the apex of solar cycle 25 when you put that sigil system over, over the geographical areas of, of the United States government.
Yes, sir. Okay. Now I got a lot of different questions, but I'm gonna definitely pick my spots because I want to maximize this time. So with that, can you kind of get into the significance? You got into it, but can you go just a little bit further into the significance of this number 9? Now, 9 is a very divine number. We can talk about the 9 ether. We can talk about the Ened from ancient Kemet. You know what I mean? Like we can talk about, we're going to go into the Orisha pantheon with the Orishas. It's the transformation, with Oya is symbolic of the number 9. So when we're talking about what's happening now, especially this year being 2025, which is numerically a 9 year, how does that all tie into everything else, from a numerical and, as you would put it, what is it, gematria perspective?
Yes.
How does that all tie together?
So when you're talking about the number 9, 9 is a representation of completion. It's the completion of a cycle, because when you look at the precessional circle of the equinox, it's said that the Draconian star constellation was working in harmony with the patrilineal system of the lunar cycle, right? So now you're having a shift in the frequency. So when you have a shift in frequency, that means that the shifting process happens by way of the alignments of the constellation. So it transmutes from the Draconian star constellation to the star Polaris that is in alignment with the Aquarian age. That brings you right back into the galactic center. So that is basically the embodiment of the completion of the cycle, the seculum of a cycle that was facilitated by Shaitan when he had ruled over the planet for 6,000 years. So since that dominion is up, now we must go through a reset, and that reset happens by way of the celestial alignments that corresponds with the numerical components of everything that takes place on the planet when you're talking about the binary code system of the matrix, because numbers are also associated with interstellar vortex portals, because numbers contain a frequency. So the number 9 denotes the fact it's a form of rebirth. Like I said, it's a form of resurrection. So in the 9 year of 2025, that is associated with the serpent, which is the Kundalini serpent fire that strikes the pineal gland. So when that strikes the pineal gland, like I said, it resurrects the carbonated man and the woman on the planet when you're talking about the original people who have prokaryotic cells. And those prokaryotic cells work in harmony with mitochondrial DNA that's tether connected to the prokaryotes, which is the first organism in the universe.
Yeah, boy. I love it. And before I go to the next phase, there's one last thing I would like to hit. If you can kind of break down in the symbolism between 9, is also the 9 ether with our hair. Those who have the kinky, curly, nappy hair that coils up towards the sun, versus those who have the 6 ether hair, which goes down to the earth. But I saw on a clip that I don't know if it was on your page or you was on somebody else's show, where you was talking about a lot of people attribute only the 9 ether hair for people who have like froze or who have locks and things of that nature. But you also broke down how you can even look at the waves, people who have waves, how that even correlates to 9 ether as well. Can you kind of like touch on that before we move forward?
As cymatic frequencies, when you look at my waves, I got waves in my hair. So the cymatic vibrations have a certain octave vibration that corresponds with the 2 elements, which is silicone and carbon. So that means that it's highly magnetic. So it has a positive electrical frequency that contains a kinetic energy. So the same thing actually corresponds with dreadlocks or, locks or whatever. It's one of those things where, when you look at the inception of time, the hair follicle is also connected to the energy of trees, because we had trees so big that it was going outside of the firmament, right? So that means that our power, which is our hair, was teleconnected to these trees, because that's where we was able to activate the epikinetic body, because the epikinetic body helps you pull out information from the epigenetics. When you pull out information for the subconscious mind and you upload it into the neurological cortex.
Oh man, I love it. And you know what's funny? I think I was either our show or another show I was watching, but even like when you look at trees, right? Like palm trees. So this t-shirt has the picture of a palm tree, right? And shout out to John Jacques Dessalines and Toussaint Louverture, the two generals from the Haitian Revolution, right? So if you look at this palm tree, it kind of reminds me of the phase I'm at in my locks. Like, you know what I'm saying? The beginning phase, it looked like a little tree. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's dope how art imitates reality from nature's aspect, also to, you know what I mean, from the humanoid, you know, connection aspect. So that's dope. That's real dope. So now when it comes to all the different areas where there's a lot of different activity that's going on, I know you had the diagram of like how the A goes across the United States, right? And how there's a lot of different types of like what's the word I'm looking for? There's a lot of different activity and motion that's going on in a lot of these different areas because of where they're situated on the fault lines and things of that nature. Where does Arizona play a role in some of these things? Like when you talk about the Grand Canyon, because I saw a post online, I think I just saw it today, but I don't remember who it was, but it was like some big crafts out in Arizona somewhere, I guess that service. Did you see that online anywhere?
I haven't seen it, but I know that's where the Cascadian Seduction Zone is at. So there's an interstellar vortex portal in that area. So that's why a lot of people say, oh, you can get to Africa through the Grand Canyon. But they don't ever give an explanation why. The reason that is because it's in alignment with the Milky Way star constellation, which is basically the epitome of the galactic center. So that's why in the inception of time, when you had the moon broke off, that's where it created a form of fermentation to the point where it was extracted from plutonium bombs. So where you have when you understand the inception of time, it talks about how Nibiru, when you're talking about the mothership, they had their own ecoid system. It had its own solar system, basically. It's autonomous. So they shot one of the suns where the Grand Canyon is at. So that's where the inception point of where the black sun started to revitalize and mend the planet back together. Because the moon and planet Earth worked in synergy at one point in time. So the moon that we have in our solar system right now is basically the external hard drive of the planet Earth. And it's a quantum satellite, and it's a artificial celestial megastructure that is being weaponized to control the energy and the frequency and the vibration of humans on the planet. So the moon, it talks about it in Japanese folklore, how they told the moon into our solar system, the dragon, because the dragon is also associated with the draconian. The draconian is also associated with the cherubim when you're talking about archonic forces. So, I mean, there's many different layers to look at it.
Right. And you know, and that's another thing. I think we might have tapped into it or touched on it, but we didn't really go that deep into it. I don't think is like these archonic forces. So I remember having a conversation with another brother. I can't remember which episode because they all running together now, but I remember talking about the differences between creator gods and ruler gods. So when you speak about the archonic forces, right, can you kind of break down for us? Because some people, especially the people who's only been exposed to this channel, like in regards to you and your work that haven't, you know, been a subscriber of your channel, there's a lot that you have on there and there's a lot that we covered the last time. But can you kind of break down the differences of these archons and the difference between a creator god and a ruler god in regards to who and what they are to what's happening now?
Okay. Well, from a biblical standpoint, when you're talking about archonic forces, it talks about how when the devil, he took Jesus on Mount Sinai, he said, I will give you all of this. I will give you the world. So when you're talking about the creation of the world in the inception of time in the book of Genesis, it's not talking about the creation of the universe. It's the creation of a simulation. And that simulation is being controlled by archonic forces who mimic the energy of human behavior to control them. So that means that they don't have the ability to create. So they mimic humans who have emotional intelligence. Because one thing, the reason they don't have the ability to create, because they don't have that emotional energy to alchemize the emotional energy to where it's able to materialize and create something in the future. So that's why I said they need us. So that's why everything within the system is an energy extraction. That's why you got to go to work. You're basically stuck in a 1260 artificial time analysis mechanism. You're stuck in a 1260 time loop that's based on a recursive time loop trauma system. So that's why I was saying, like, you know, as far as like artificial intelligence, it's actually corresponding with the Archonic forces who is controlling humanity, but now it's happening by way of the technology. Because one thing about Archons, there's a different nomenclature title when you're talking about Yaldabaoth. Yaldabaoth, his other name is Electro. So the electricity of oscillating signals that's working in tandem with the technological radiation is able to travel and basically mimic human behavior. So even when you're talking about parasites, like I said, parasites are basically tracking systems for the Archons to control humans. Because like I said, they need us to control, or they need us to create this simulation. They don't have the ability to create by themselves. So that means that, like I said, the simulation is basically the epitome of the fact that we're stuck in a firmament. That's why when you're talking about in the book of Genesis, chapter 3, verse 5, it says that Satan separated the intergalactic waters from the third dimension. So that's why they talk about in the book of Genesis to create the firmament. The firmament is a controlled quarantine simulation. And that's what it uses. They can't create anything outside of that paradigm. Like I said, that's when you get to the apex of the mental plane. So this is why you have a manipulation of technological devices, because the firmament is tether connected to the electrical grid, and it's connected to all these ley lines to block out the energy. Now they want to put another damn golden dome over the planet, right? Or just over the geographical area of America. And the reason that is because they know that the Schumann resonance spike is starting to speed up in vibration. So it's going from 7.83 megahertz frequency to 13.13 megahertz frequency, which is the Queen Mother seed. So that means that the restoration of the matriarch is happening by way of the activation of nature. So you got all these coronal mass ejection. These are the ancestors that's coming back and activating these chakra points where you're talking about Mount Shasta. Because if that volcano erupts, that's going to be 10,000 earthquakes that's going to trigger. That's going to activate the seven thunders. And the seven thunders are the seven bows, and the seven bows are the seven forms of destruction when you're talking about the Great Tribulation period.
Yeah, boy. Yeah. And okay. So 7 is another number that has a lot of symbolism and a lot of great attributes to it. So if you talk about like the seventh heaven, the seven chakras, the seven major musical notes on the musical scale, the seven major colors on the color spectrum, you know what I mean? Like the 7 days of the week, all those things. But then also you have the 7 layers of the inner earth, or to get to the inner earth. Does any of that kind of correlate and play a role as to when we like travel within, and like say if you want to go into a deep meditation and you kind of got to start with your root chakra and work your way all the way up through the crown chakra, does any of that play a role in how we're able to connect with the Schumann resonance, and we're able to connect with the information that's being streamed and beamed down from the neutrinos, or the information that's coming from, you know, the sun and the black sun, all that? Does all that kind of correlate together in regards to us being able to elevate our frequencies and to be able to astral travel and astral project, as well as elevating the resonance of our, you know, internal, or I should say auric or etheric body energies or frequencies?
Yes, because when you're able to tap into the extrasensory perception, which is where you get your intrinsic abilities such as clairvoyance and kinetic energy, or being able to read minds, you know, levitation, all this is activated by the gamma radiation, and that gamma radiation activates right knowledge. So that means that it has the ability to create those positive electrical crystals in the brain to where you become a god. So even in ancient Hinduism, they say that Shiva is the outer manifestation of, Krishna is the outer manifestation of Shiva, because Krishna is a representation of Christ, and Shiva, when you break down the etymological roots of the word, it means 7. So that means that 7 is also the embodiment of God. So and also talks about, a resurrection process too, by way of, mind, science, technology. So even when you look at the inception of time, it's also talking about creation. So this is why in the More Science Temple, we hold up the 7, right? It's based on, plant, animal, protoplasm, man, mankind, cherubim, and seraphim. So those are 7, cycles of creation that created everything by way of the activation of carbon, because carbon is the building block of all civilization when it's all amalgamated with the ether to materialize, physical reality. the circle of life. So that's why I was saying, like the Alpha and Omega, when you look at the ancient Hebrew Tav symbol, it represents creation and destruction. That's why I said 9 is the embodiment of the ending of a cycle, because something has to resurrect from it, and that's the resurrection of the indigenous people. So even when you look at the Denver airport, monoliths inside they got these things. It's showing you the destruction of those that was cursed with leprosy. So that's why they show you the leopard being down, but they have the resurrection of Phoenix that's acclimated to the indigenous people. So that means that time period, as you have the resurrection of nature, you having a resurrection of a certain people that's connected to these land masses. That's what's taking place right now. So they're going to tell you every time about the symbolism.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm glad you mentioned the Denver airport, because that was something I wanted to bring up on the last one with you. It kind of slipped my mind in regards to all the other stuff we was talking about. But there is a whole lot going on that's attributed to that Denver airport. And I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories about it having a entry level or entry point to the inner earth, the underground tunnel systems, the underground bunkers, and all those things. Can you kind of share and tap into like what that particular airport is hiding, or what it's a cover for, or what it's there for? And then also, if you could share any insight or any knowledge that you may have, based upon your research as to what's going on from like the dark side or the shadow government aspects of that airport.
Denver, the reason that's a very an important place to the elite and the plutocracy, the reason that is because that's going to be the new capital when you having a shifting of land masses. They even showed you in the movie, in the TV show Paradise. That's where they started to, transmute all the minerals and all these preservatives to, having these cave systems that was connected to the Denver airport. So like I said, that's where they talking about the Emerald City in the Bible, right? So even though it's kind of like it's on a perceptual level, it's talking about the macrocosm and the microcosm. So the macrocosm of, the Emerald City is basically talking about there's going to be some type of extraterrestrial spaceship or mothership in that area. That's what they said that the Crystal City is going to rise up, because I believe there's an Emerald City in Colorado. But also it's also corresponding, talking about the activation of the pineal gland when it's able to dematerialize from calcification. So when you're talking about, the pineal gland, that is Emerald City. That is basically the connection of the cephaloid bone when you're talking about the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, boy.
So it's able to crystallize. So it's in connection with the pituitary gland and the pineal gland. So that's also, in the embodiment of the Emerald City as well. So like I said, a lot of these stories in the Bible is actually corresponding to the context of the human body, but there is an actual Emerald City that they talk about in the Bible, which is the actual city that's in Colorado that's connected to the Denver airport. But we're also the Emerald City as well when you go through a crystallization process.
Yes, sir. Now, when you're talking about all of that with the whole process of the crystallization process, and then the pineal gland and the pituitary gland, all that, where does the Barthany gland?
But yeah, the Bathari gland.
Gland. Yeah. Where does the Bathari gland play a role in this? Because I know all that's connected, and some people may have never heard of the Bathari gland. I heard of it, but being a student of doctors, I learned about it in research and studied it. But can you kind of share with us how that all ties in with our powers and the access to the abilities that we have, or that we lost due to us not having access to that Bathari gland?
Well, when you look at the cuneiform language and ancient Proto-Semitic language, it tells you that the Bathari gland is also esoterically connected to the hippocampus layer of the brain. So the Bathari gland, when you break down the etymology of the word and you get to the matrix of it, it means a different space and time. So that's connected to your higher abilities when you have the activation of the hippocampus layer of the brain, because they both work in tandem. So the hippocampus layer of the brain, in the inception of birth, when you go to these westernized, pharmaceutical organizations and you go to their facilities when you're born, they inject PCP inside the hippocampus layer of the brain that creates the holonomic brain theory. It's basically putting encryption over your neurological faculties to where, they're basically stopping it before you're able to tap into it. So they do all those stuff in the inception of birth. So they, that's why, as far as like the pharmaceutical industries or whatever, it actually goes against who we are on a neurological level and on a, genetical level, because it only corresponds with their synthetic forms of, how they carry themselves in their dietary systems or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And then even like with the utilization or the usage of both, hemispheres of the brain. So like me, for example, I'm someone who I'm ambidextrous because there's very few things I do. I guess technically I'd be considered left-handed because I write with my left hand, I eat with my left hand, I fight with my left hand, I shoot with my left hand, but everything else I do right-handed. I play basketball, football, baseball, bowling, like, what I'm saying? Everything else pretty much I do with my right hand. But I do know that there's some sort of correlation between people who are able to train their minds or who are just naturally ambidextrous by using the left and the right hand, because then you're activating both the left and the right hemisphere of the brain. So does that kind of play a role into like this whole thing when we're talking about the crystallization and the ability to time travel, astral project, or, just tap into that inner self? Does that all correlate to what we're talking about with the crystallization and the access to the Bartholin gland, as well as the pituitary and the pineal gland?
Yeah, because, the activation of the crown chakra happens when you have the activation of the neuroendocrine transducer. So it transduces from a carbonated state into a crystalline state. So that's what we also call the philosopher's stone. The philosopher's stone is the pineal gland. When it's amalgamated with those neutrinos that we were talking about, because when you look at, when you're talking about Noah's Ark, because like I said, everything in the Bible corresponds with, the original man's, structure. So when you're talking about Noah, when you break down the etymology, it means mind. When you're talking about archangels, but those archangels are angles of light, and those angles of light hits the mind, which is neutrinos. That activates, the philosopher's stone in a form of crystallization. So that's what we talk. You're really just talking about, spiritual metamorphosis, where a human becomes God in the Aquarian age, basically. That's what you talk
about. I love it. Shout out to Conscious Queen 84. She said it's the only time I've been able to relate to somebody scientifically breaking down the literal biological truth of existence. Yeah, that's what we're doing too, and we're gonna continue to do that. So with us doing that, I know there's a lot of things going on with nature and with the planet, especially with, I think it was in Oregon, we were talking about the that underwater volcano. But also, can you kind of tap into these, what was it, 1,000 eggs that they found that they discovered? What was all that about, them eggs?
They were saying that, it was actually 2 million. So they found 2 million eggs, and they said it's coming from an unknown species. So just, just by my logical assertion on that, those could be a Leviathan eggs, because volcanic eruptions, they can contain a certain loosh in sustenance to where draconian reptilians or archonic forces is able to feed on that loosh, is able to feed on that sustenance. So that's why when you look at, a lot of trees around volcanoes, that happens, the reason that is because they become a lot more greener. When just everything in nature tells you about the cosmic clock, it tells you what time it is. So anytime you see any type of intrinsic growth that is, connected to a form of nature. So a lot of the trees around volcanoes or whatever, they're a lot more greener. They're a lot more intrinsic when they're about to activate. That's because it contains a energy of carbon dioxide, and that carbon dioxide activates that, that energy underneath the planet that's connected to those volcanoes. So it's kind of like the same process. It's like, the reset in itself is just, tapped into the fact that the earth is going through a rebirth. When a woman's pregnant, she's glowing and things of that nature. So the planet is actually doing the same thing. That's why the trees is, the sun is shining brighter, the green, grass is greener, trees is greener, everything is starting to activate.
I love that analogy because we got a lot of females in the house tonight, and I know every female and a lot of brothers who either have children or married or, that's been in a relationship with a woman during that time frame. But yeah, everything increases. Like their hair grows faster. I believe the nails grow faster. The skin shines brighter. Everything is heightened. On a whole, like not even just an esoteric scale, like on a whole physical and spiritual scale, everything is heightened. And you have some women who I know this for a fact. Like I think even like my mom, but I know there's other people and other women who are hairdressers where they can tell if a woman is pregnant just by them touching their hair. Like they can feel the difference in their hair follicles. Yeah, I've heard of that. I bet you somebody that I know, I'm not the only one that's heard of that before. Tribe, if y'all have either experienced it or you know someone who has experienced that. But yeah, women can tell if other women are pregnant when they're doing their hair or doing something with their hair. I can't tell you what the whole, like how they're able to do that, but I know that's a real thing that I've heard, from.
I wonder if that's the reason why they probably have the activation of that X gene, because the X gene is what turns you into an X-man, X-woman. Like I said, when you understand the inception of time, when you're talking about the genetic mutation process of the man and the woman, because when you look at the X chromosome, it's actually a genetic mutation of the man. So what I'm basically saying is that the man is a genetic mutation of the woman. So that's why the Y looks like a broken X.
Yeah.
So the activation of the X gene. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah. The activation of the X gene is actually, talking about, your intrinsic abilities. But the so-called black woman or the indigenous woman, she's the original being on the planet.
I sure.
Somebody had called me. This took me off the screen.
Oh, okay. Nah, I see you loud and clear on my end, man. We're good. But yeah, that's definitely a real thing. So I've seen it. I've heard of it, and I've heard people who have shared with me that that happens in regards to like the women and being pregnant and things of that nature. But when it comes to those eggs, where do they find those 2 million eggs at?
They found them at the Mount Shasta in Oregon. So it's actually in the same area where you have Mount Shasta. It's just water.
Wow. I'm curious as to like what that could be. Like they just appeared out of nowhere. Like how long has it been since they've been discovered?
It's been about they've been talking about it for the past 2 weeks. Yep.
So this is all brand new.
Yeah. So those, like I said, in my opinion, those are Leviathan eggs.
And what is that?
Leviathan is a serpent, or it's.
I know about Leviathan, but what are the eggs? So you think that the serpent actually had eggs and like laid them?
I'm thinking is because they don't know where it came from, and they're giant eggs. That's where they found them. You know what I'm saying? They found them at the Mount Shasta, right at the apex of the root chakra of planet Earth.
This is crazy.
And that's also the same area. If that volcano erupts, you're going to have over 10,000 earthquakes that can activate every fault line in America. So that's why I said it corresponds with, those 3 solar eclipses, the solar eclipse from 2017, 23, and 24. So the Ring of Fire solar eclipse was on my birthday on October 14th of 2003. So you also got the Ring of Fire geographical area right where the Mount Shasta and Mount Shasta was at, and the same place where the Black Sun was at. Not a coincidence. Not a coincidence. Wow. So because like I said, just even when you're looking at, from a spiritual metamorphosis standpoint, when you're talking about the activation of the chakra points, we all know, like I said, your sexual energy is your cosmic fuel. You need that to resurrect yourself. That's how you activate the Kundalini. It starts at the root chakra first. That's why you have a lot of hedonistic activity in Hollywood, because they got to invert the energy. Because if they invert the energy, that means that those people in that geographical location can tap into their power, because they're using the sex in a form of hedonism. They're using it for Canaanite practices and worship. They're not using it for spiritual transmission.
Yeah, they're using it to do dark magic with it. That's what they're doing. And that plays a huh?
That's why they do the Hollywood tree. When you're talking about the Hollywood symbol, wood up there, the Hollywood symbol, they use it for transgressive art. Because Hollywood ability, when it amalgamates with semen, you can actually, alchemize and use it for, dark incantations. Sacrifice.
Yeah, because even like the name Holly, like Hollywood, like that's like a tree, like fairies and freaking what are they called? The little fairies that be having the little thing with the little wand and all that. Like
fairy.
That stuff is real. I think people don't realize how real it is, but it's real. Like they be like,
they even showed you in the movie Robin Hood. with Robin Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, I think it was Robin Hood Hook when he became Peter Pan.
See, I ain't seen that in a long time. I haven't seen it. I have to go back and watch that. But I know, I do know it's a real thing, though. I know that part.
Yeah, it's talking about Hollow Earth. You got mermaids and everything in Hollow Earth. So everything that they telling us that's fantasy, those are actually fifth dimensional black civilizations. Because Peter Pan was actually black. He was a blackamoor that lived inside Hollow Earth, but he was actually green. And
then you have like the it's a lot like the dwarfs, like that's real. There's just so many things that we see that we really like. They putting right in our face, and a lot of people don't realize or don't know that it's real. Like, for example, I was just having a conversation the other day about different types of extraterrestrial species, right? And I'm like, there's so many different types of species and variations that it's like we could literally do a podcast every day for the rest of the month and not cover probably every species that's out there, because there's so many different ones. So even like the ones who that are like the praying mantis, for example, right? You have those beings who they're actually humanoid beings that that are like praying mantis. You have you know what I mean? Like, it's just so many that we can go into the different types of species, but they put the truth in our face. But because they, I think they dumb down so many people and they try to make it out to be like it's just fairy tale or fiction. That we don't. The truth is so hard to believe, it's unbelievable. You know what I mean? Because we talk about the Sasquatches. We got into that last time. We talked about how they're real, especially how they travel, through wooded areas and Amazon areas with a lot of vegetation and all that, how they can create kind of like portals and how they can create those cloaks to kind of cloak themselves so people can't see them and all that. And I remember after we did that one, somebody, I don't know if it was on the live or in the comments, where they were saying Harry and the Hendersons and how, you know what I mean? Like that's a good correlation as to what, these real Sasquatches are.
Mm-hmm. They're going to start to reveal themselves eventually.
Yeah.
Because this is why I'm going to say that, because the more you have a manipulation in the energy grid, that's going to dematerialize the ley lines, because the ley lines is how they hide, because the ley lines have black holes in them. So it's kind of like the same thing, like when I'm in my house, you got black holes inside your house. So this is why sometimes my keys might end up missing, my phone might end up missing, and it might come back. So the same thing actually takes place when you're talking about these extraterrestrial entities. They hide in dark pockets of the universe that works in tandem with the ley lines. So when you have these neutrinos coming in, that's going to reverse the polarity of the illusion. It's going to reveal the illusion. You're going to start seeing certain entities in physical form because you can't hide it no more. Because the ley line grid system is a fifth dimensional technology. They call it liquid crystal polarization. So to where it basically bends the photon-like spectrum to where it's able to transmutate, physical entities. Entities.
Oh yeah. Now, how does this work? Because I've also had other guests on where we speak about like the different levels of people in regards to where they are spiritually or where they are with their gifts or the ability to tap into their gifts. So you mentioned earlier about ESP and like these extrasensory perceptions. I know some people have an extremely heightened skill or gift, in regards to the extrasensory perceptions. And so for me personally, I've had multiple experiences where I've seen shadow figures, where I've seen spiritual beings, where I've seen a couple times I've seen things in the physical realm that just took place and was like, gone. Like one time I thought I was really tripping. It was like a few years ago. I'll never forget. I was coming out of my garage and I remember it was like a gray cat. And man, this thing went from one side of the garage to the other side, as if it literally did kind of like a teleportation, because it didn't run across my goddamn path. I know it didn't run across, but it went from one side and I looked to the other side and it's right there behind some tree. I'm like, yo, I sat there for a minute. I'm like, I know I'm not tripping, bro. Like I ain't on no intoxicants, no nothing. I know I'm not tripping. How the hell did that cat just teleport from one side of the garage to the other side? And then it was nuts. But I've seen things like that with my own eyes, and I've heard other people share with me how they've had experiences as well. So with that, have you actually had any experiences where you've had, anything that's kind of like out of the ordinary, where it was some sort of like extra dimensional or extraterrestrial type of being or entity that was involved with it?
I haven't really had a lot of experiences or whatever, but I'll tell you one experience I had, which is kind of like the reason why I'm doing the same work right now, being on, videos and stuff and demonstrating information, because it was one point in time in my life that I just had information. I wasn't able to connect the dots. I was just a person you would ask me some, and I just give you a surface level information. I didn't have the ability to connect those dots or whatever and dig deeper with the information. So that was like, about 7 years ago. So what happened 7 years ago, I told myself if it's meant for me to understand information intuitively, I give it back to the people, with no type of incentive or no type of anything where I'm going to try to capitalize off the people, what I'm saying, with the information and weaponize it. So I meditated on it, and I guess you could call it praying or whatever. And then I promise you, probably about like a few days later, I seen these entities. Like I was in a theta state. My brain was. I was like kind of half asleep, but I was like awake still. And I seen 3 entities in the corner of my room. Because one thing you understand about non-corporeal apparitions, they like to stand in 90-degree angles, right? They like to hide in corners. So it don't matter if it's a good entity or a benevolent entity, or a benevolent or a malevolent entity. But these entities, I seen them. It was 3 of them, and I felt like this energy over my chest. But it wasn't one of those things where I didn't feel castigated. I didn't feel like it was something that was very intrusive or cynical. It felt like I was at home. So I felt like this warm energy over my chest, and I say from that night, what I'm saying, like after that, I started to come across like information, more like dig deeper with the information, and I was able to absorb, the knowledge, at a higher state, to where I was able to break down surface level information and then tap into, whatever. So I don't know. Some people tell me that I told this story too. They told me it was the 3 magi, or the three elders, or whatever. I don't know. But that's the only experience I ever had. So, and it also kind of like put me in alignment, which gave me the propensity to, start go out and doing information and put it on screen or whatever, because I'm not an on camera type of person. Everybody who know me, I'm not the one to be on camera. So I'm being led to do such.
Yeah, I love that answer, man, because I can relate. I've had a lot of them. I mean, a lot, but so many that hell, I could just do a show alone on the experiences. And the beautiful thing is I have a couple of craft sightings that I have on video footage I haven't shared yet publicly. But I've had my fair share of experiences and occurrences, whether it be in the dream state, whether it be in the physical state, and in the metaphysical state during a couple of Reiki sessions. I know one of my last Reiki sessions I had, shout out to Millie, my Reiki master. She gave me a session to where I remember astral projecting into what appeared to be like almost like a futuristic boardroom. And at the time when I had this projection, I wasn't able to put 2 and 2 of what I was a part of and what I was witnessing. But the way it went is that there was another being who guided me once I was out there, in my projection. And I remember that being bringing me to, which looked like a meeting of like the galactical guardians or the guardians of the galaxy, right? And I remember it was a huge space and it was very futuristic. It was beautiful. And I just remember it was like I was standing in the back with whoever this deity or entity was that escorted me there, and we just chilling. And they just they're not saying anything, but everything is being communicated through telepathy. And I'm seeing around the table, it was almost like what would happen, what I would assume like in the government, if Trump had something in the Pentagon or, wherever they had their most outlandish or secretive, top secret meetings or whatever. It came across as something like that, but it was from a galactical standpoint. And the beings there, every single one of them, they look very powerful, very distinguished in a matter of pretty much it's the creme de la creme. There's like nothing above them type thing. It was dope, man. But I say all that to say, in that experience, it didn't resonate with me in that day and time, like what that was, until after the fact. And what she was telling me, it made sense. But then in hindsight, now I'm looking at it as if it was like almost sitting in on a meeting with the 24 elders, because that's what it came back to after, though, because it's so much that was taking place during the moment. I just didn't have the clarity or the mental wherewithal to kind of put 2 and 2 together. But in hindsight now, after a lot of times passed and I can kind of go back and revisit, that's exactly what it looked like. And what I saw, man, it was phenomenal. It really was. And it's like, yo, this is it. And it amazes me to see how many things have unfolded since then. And then another one that I personally had where I don't really feel like there was an actual a presence that I can identify or quantify or put a finger on. But I remember walking through the slave dungeons in Elmina over in Ghana, on the west coast of on the Ivory Coast of Ghana. And I'll never forget it, bro. I remember going in there and I had bought some libations to pour out for the ancestors during the tour, but I forgot it in the car. And I remember my godfather was like, yo, don't worry about it, man. Just wait till the tour is over. Then go back and get it. And then you can come in here and do whatever you have to do when it's just you. I was like, you know what? That makes perfect sense. And so I remember I went back, I got the little nip of alcohol, liquor, and I came back. And I just walked through there saying my prayers, but I was dropping libations as I was saying my prayers. And bro, when I tell you I was praying, like anybody who I've done work with or that I've worked with, they know how I pray hard. But I was praying. Like, I mean, praying. I'm talking to them like I'm talking to you. Like I'm talking about praying though, bruh. And to see now, like so many different things that's unfolding, you know what I'm saying, in our favor in regards to us having the assistance and the guidance and being led by the ancestors. Yes. Can't nobody tell me that there wasn't some strong ripple effects that was created during the prayers, bro. For real.
That shit is real, man. Like there's a lot of things that happen metaphysically. You know what I'm saying? Certain things happen for a reason. You know, it's not even that you have these experiences. Sometimes, you know what I'm saying, the universe is going to tell you who you are and what you're supposed to be doing just based on certain numerical codexes and just by certain individuals that give you information. I remember a lady, I used to work at this place called Berry Plastics when I was a freshman, and I was going into my freshman year of college. And this lady, she came up to me, an old white lady, I'm leaving work, and she stopped me and she was like, I don't know what it is. You're going to do something very great in this world. You know, I'm 17. I'm like, fuck you talking about? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying to get off work. Like, what you talking about? Like, I play college basketball. I play Division II. I'm trying to go to the league. What you talking about? Like, ain't really much I can, resurrect the world as far as like me hooping or whatever. But I didn't really like, I knew information because I used to watch, Black Magic Channel, you know what I'm saying, since I was in middle school. So I was kind of like, damn, I'm like, what are you talking about? What I'm supposed to be doing? Because like I'm a hooper, you know what I'm saying? That's how I looked at it. Then another experience I had, it was I'm coming out of the gas station, and another lady, she comes up to me, an older lady. This one was she was a melanated woman. She said that you're gonna do. She basically alluded the same thing. You're gonna do something great. And another older lady told me that, and I'm thinking to myself like that's like 3 different occasions. Like what's going on? You know what I'm saying? So now everything happens full circle. So it's kind of like, it makes sense. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
And I'm going to tell you what happened, because sometimes, and I'm telling you, I've had those experiences where random people, I mean, complete random strangers will give me some advice or some insight or some knowledge or drop some jewels on me that are things that I took with me for the rest of my life that I'll never forget. And I'm going to tell you, like, what I know for a fact is sometimes you'll have an ancestor or a spirit guide or a guardian or Orisha, Neteru, whoever, you'll have a form of a heightened, superior deity or intelligence that'll kind of incarnate or just like usually literally use someone else as the messenger, you know what I mean, to give you a message, you know what I mean? So it's divine how that happens. And I've had it several times as well. Like, I mean, complete random strangers will tell you some shit, like, what? But it might not make sense in the moment, but years later, like, oh, I remember when, you know what I mean, so-and-so said this or da-da-da-da. So yeah, that's a real thing, man. I wholeheartedly feel like sometimes spirit, will communicate through other people to get you the information that you need, or at least drop the jewel on you that you need. That might be something that might come across, you're manifesting in your timeline like years or, whoever knows how long in the future. But it's something that really happens. I feel like that's the creator working through us, doing what the creator do.
Yeah, because it's also one of those things where some people can see auras or whatever.
Yeah.
You got that green light. They understand that you have that benevolent energy to where you're able to be balanced, to where you're able to make a difference on this planet. Mm-hmm. That's why that's what we call the spirit of Melchizedek. It's the Sufi order of the sons of green light. Mm-hmm. The sons of green light, the ones who got the knowledge, the ones who got that intelligence, the one who got that authenticity, the one that's able to alchemize every situation in life to where they're able to tap into the energy of resilience. Everybody don't have that hero's journey. That's that super word. You know what I'm saying? Those are the ones that's on the chosen path. Right? So like some people can see that in you before they see it in yourself. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I said, by way of transmutation of energy, they can use, certain people as telepathic devices to transmute a different message to you, to tell you, hey, you're doing something. So that was just like 3 times they was sounding like, hey, the ancestors like, hey, bro, you ain't supposed to be hooping. So the last straw was kind of like that same thing with those 3 entities in my room. It was kind of like, all right, now that, like, we pulling up now, bro. Like, you been ignoring the whole time. We gonna pull up. You ask for the knowledge. Like, let's see what you really about. So that's how I think, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they put up on me. So yeah,
that's facts. And that happens through divination all the time. Like almost every time I've ever received one or given one, like there's always outside, forces that are communicating, deities that are communicating. So it's like it's a very powerful. It's definitely a very powerful energy transfer, that takes place because, and what I love is like, there's been times where I'll never forget the first time. Matter of fact, shout out to my cuz, because he actually inboxed me the other day when he saw the first show we did, man. I'll never forget, and I hope he's watching. If he's not, whenever he sees it, he'll remember this. But I'll never forget the first time I had an ancestor communicate with me to give me a message to someone else, and it blew my mind, bro. I'll never forget it because I was chilling at the dining room table, and I was texting with my cousin, the same one who that inboxed me about the show with you, and I remember texting with him. I don't know what we was texting about. We was texting about something, and then I just recall getting like a telepathic text, like this voice. It wasn't even a voice. It's hard to explain, but it was a message like, "Yo, ask him about the time I beat him in a race." I'm thinking to myself, like, what the fuck? Like, where is this coming from? I'm tripping a little bit, like, what is this about? Where is this coming from? So I'm kind of trying to ignore it. I'm driving by, I'm texting. So then I was like, man, okay, after it happened a couple times, like, all right, let me just, so I sit to tell, like, bro, I said, cuz, I said, do you know, like, I don't know why, but I'm getting this message, like, about somebody that's saying, like, they, like, ask you about the time where they beat you in a race with their black car. Now, mind you, we're texting back and forth, so all the responses were coming kind of quick. So when I sent that text, it was like 4 or 5 minutes before he responded. Right? So he sat there for a minute before he responded. When he responded back, he was like, "Yo," he was like, "Cuz, like, yeah, man." He was like, "I'm here with my homeboy." He was like, "We sit there chopping up." He was like, "Yeah." He was like, "One of my friends passed away recently." And he was like, and the only time he beat me in a race, he had a black Benz. And he was like, yo, he was like, he was talking mad shit about it. Every time we saw each other after that happened, he was like, "How did you know that?" I was like, bruh. I said, "I don't know." I was like, "But your friend said he wanted to let you know that he beat you in that race." I said, "So what I'm getting is what I'm getting is he's on the other side and he's good. Y'all don't worry, you know what I'm saying, stress about it. He's straight." And after I said that to him, I said, "So I'm about to go ahead and call tonight, cuz I'm going to sleep. I'll holler at you."
And that guy passed away?
Yes, it was somebody that he knew, one of his friends, right? And they raced a lot. My cousin be hearing that Fast and Furious stuff. So like that dude died recently. Like I guess within, like a week or so of that message coming to me. But I couldn't like not unhear the message. So it was weird to me, bro. So I was like, I went ahead and said it. And then when he paused and it took him a while to come back, I'm like, well, what the hell happened? But then when he came back, he was like, "Cuz, like, I'm blowed. Like, I can't believe you just said that." He was like, because I guess him and his other homeboy were there and they might even been talking about the dude. But I know for a fact that when I said that, he knew exactly who I was talking about. He knew what car he was driving. He knew all of it. He was like, "Yo, that's nuts, cuz." I said, "Yeah, I know." I said, "No, I'm taking my nuts ass to sleep because I don't know what this is about, but I'm not getting tangled up in this no more tonight."
There's definitely a metaphysical connection with that when you're talking about the movie Casper. Everybody need to watch the movie, the older one, a long time ago, Casper, the first one. There's a metaphysical message with that. It's basically showing you the spiritual realm on a simplistic level. So it's kind of like one of those things where when you have, fragmented souls and those that was, kind of stuck in the in-between, because we all know that in the physical world, we all have an emotional connection to it. So if you have a veneration for smoking, drinking, or racing, whatever, it's going to keep you stuck in the in-between, and it's going to make you use other vessels as a host to connect with certain messages or whatever, and to basically fulfill whatever, whatever you was trying to do within the physical world. So that's how they do it. Spirits that are stuck in the in-between work through other individuals who are, at a low vibrational state. So they use them as a catalyst to, have, to basically finish their unfinished business, basically.
Yeah.
So that's basically the same movie Casper. he wasn't able to ascend until he completed whatever he was meant to complete.
His mission. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do they call it? What is that state called? I can't think of the name of it. When you're in that limbo state, there's another name for it besides limbo, though. Purgatory or purgatory or something like that.
I call it purgatory, or they call it the land of sticks.
Gotcha. Okay.
You really like you stuck in the in between until you complete whatever mission, because you can still fulfill your purpose in the spiritual realm, but you have to use other vessels. That's the only thing. So instead of, you know what I'm saying, like, let's just say, you know, my mission was to go to the NBA, just like in the movie 6 Man. So he wanted to go to the NBA and be the best, that, you know, so bad to the point where he was able to resurrect himself through his brother. You know what I'm saying? That's what spirits do that's stuck in the in-between. They stuck in purgatory. They use other vessels who was vibrating low, because like I said, remember when he lost his brother, he was at a low vibrational state because he was sad. So like I said, this is why you got to be balanced, because that's where entities is able to work through you. So it depends on what frequency you on. So the movie, man, they show you right there. If they got unfinished business, you know, they're gonna work through other hosts and other vessels. Yeah,
no, that's real, because I definitely had my fair share of messages from ancestors who's come through mediums. Like, because I know, you know, my grandmother came through a medium to give me some information several times. This happened twice that she came through a medium, but also she even came to one of my sons during surgery, like when he was in the state of you know, what do you call it, anesthesia, when he was under the anesthesia. Like, she came there with him, was chilling, man. Even brought my dog, who, you know, passed away too, you know, with him to chill with him, to let him know everything's gonna be all right, man. It was dope. But I'll never forget when he came out of it, when he shared with his mom that she was there with him. I'm like, yo, you can't tell me that there's no such thing. You know what I'm saying? Not on top of my own personal experiences I've had with ancestors that's come to give messages and come to deliver insight or whatever the case may be. So it's like life for us does not end. It just transforms. We literally just transform out of this body into the next realm, into the next dimension, to continue to do whatever work, you know, that we're on the path to do.
And speaking on that, you know, just on a different level, you know, I think certain unfortunate people who are homeless, I think they able to see auras too, because sometimes like you know, a homeless person, they already know. I don't know why they know I'm gonna give them some money if they ask me. So every time they see me, they, you know what I'm saying, I always give them. I don't know, it's just like an energy that they're attracted to, and it makes it, I guess I got like a welcoming energy or whatever. I see that. I don't know.
Yeah. Nah, it's funny, brother. Big Chief has spoke about the homeless people. Like, homeless people, hell, they might be an extraterrestrial entity, or, you know what I'm saying, an ancestor or an elevated master. Like, they just not participating with the matrix. You know what I mean? I remember he broke that down. I can't remember which show it was, but he broke it down as to, like, some of the homeless people, they could be the most genius or most brilliant people, you know, in the world, but they just got to a phase or a stage in their life where they're like, F it. Like, they don't want to deal with this BS no more. So they're just like, fuck it. I just go live on the street, so I ain't got to deal with none of this bullshit. And I really believe that, because I've encountered some people who, you know, were homeless, but like, they were brilliant. I mean, absolutely brilliant. So it's just like, there's a lot, I feel like, that, you know, that's to that. I think there's more that meets the eye, but what you're saying with that too, for real.
If you want to be 100, you know, homeless people already won the game already, because they already broke free from the matrix.
Yeah.
They're not subjected to time. A lot of people are being controlled by way of the time, and time is an illusion. So they already broke free, you know, from a liberation standpoint, mentally and physically. They can do what they want to do. They're living amongst nature on top of that.
Yeah.
So that means that, you know what I'm saying, they're not using the, you know, the amenities of the three-dimensional world to, you know, have some type of sovereignty on this planet. You know, they're just doing it autonomously to the point where, like I said, we don't need your system. I ain't got to go to work. I'll wake up at 3 p.m. on this concrete. You know, I'm gonna do what I want to do. That's what really taking your power back. Taking your power back is being able for you to, you know, control your time to where time is controlling you.
Yeah, they're not conforming to the system. They're not acquiescing to it. They're like, I'm gonna live on my terms, on my you know, by any means necessary, and that is what it is. I know we got a little bit more time left, so before I keep stealing all the questions, man, I did highlight a few different ones that I want to kind of bring up that we can tap into real quick before we before we have to shut this down. One of them, I can't find it to bring it to the forefront, but I remember one of them asked, and I feel like I got a good idea what your answer is going to be, but I would love to still hear it. One of the brothers or sisters asked, in regards to us as a people, do you feel like Black people are actually in alignment with a rise, and a transformation out of the current state that we're in regards to, I would assume they're talking about like oppression and, being under the system, all those things of that nature.
Yes, but we have to go through a cleansing state because it's going to be a demographic that's going to hold us back. So this is why I was saying, I think the year of 2028 is the year of the sheep and the goat. So no, the year of the sheep and the lamb. No, the year of the goat and the lamb. So that's going to tell you the great separation is going to be amongst, humanity. That's talking about a separation process. It's not actually talking about, animals and things of that nature. They're talking about a difference in a dichotomy between different mindsets on the planet. And that's what's going to happen. The planet has to go through a restoration. It has to go through a supplication process. So it has to reset. So those who are connected to the old system that was under patriarchy, under the Draconian star constellation, under a patrilineal system, those are the ones that we must separate from, because now we have the Aquarian age, to where you have an intrinsic amount of knowledge that's coming to the planet. That's basically reversing the polarity of everything that was connected to their, deep state forms of democracy and all their policies and all the laws that they passed that, took us out of our sovereign capacity. So you're going to have a split in mindsets. And the split in mindsets is really talking about the great separation amongst, people. So just because they look like us doesn't mean that we must, use them as a galvanization process to, to have these resources amongst each other. So it's one of those things where we got to divorce ourselves from, the so-called Blacks who was upholding patriarchy, who was upholding hedonistic activity that's connected to the industry, the music industry, the movie industry, and all these things that's connected to this Luciferian system. So like I said, the inversion of itself is happening, by way of the pole shift. The activation of nature is going to put everything right back in balance. So those who are not working in harmony with that, those are the ones that we got to get away from. Those are your Boule society. Those are the ones that's connected to the secret societies, Freemasons, pastors, preachers. These are all those, people are all connected to the corporation. Anything that's connected to the material world that's galvanized by the moon, those are the energies that we must divorce ourselves from, because we're in the sun cycle. We're not under the energy no more. So that means it's the fall of the corporation, the fall of monotheism, the fall of monetary. It's the fall of everything. It's connected to the moon. Moon day, mind day. It's the fall of the corporation. The fall of patriarchy is moonfall. So
yes,
those
sir.
who are connected to that energy of the moon, that's what we must separate from.
Facts. Yeah, that's big facts. And then also, and I see a lot. It's going to be hard to keep up with all the comments because there's a lot of them. But also, so now, in regards to the nature, so I see they're projecting a lot of hurricanes and a lot of storms that hit the Southeast this year, which I'm not surprised. But when you talk about like the earthquakes, the tornadoes, the hurricanes, the volcanoes, and even over the last few years, there's been a lot of different like ice storms, or like really cold weather or snowy and ice weather in areas that's generally not even used to getting snow or getting cold weather like that. Is all of this like a correlation to, because what I've said on a few other shows is like, to me, I take this as Mother Earth going through her cleansing cycle, just like a woman when she's on her menstrual cycle. I feel like Mother Earth is on her planetary menstrual cycle, like where she's fishing out all of the, all the bad, toxins and parasites and, all the other bullshit, and bringing forth, a new egg, a new system, a new reality, a new access to, this fifth dimension and things of that nature. Is that how you see it as well? Or do you have a different view on that?
Yeah, because planet Earth sees frequencies just like how we're able to see frequencies. So if you're vibrating at the root chakra, you're a parasite. You're going to have a parasitical energy to where you're going to extract from the earth. You're not going to harmonize with planet Earth. So those are the ones that's extracting energy from Earth and from the indigenous people. Those are the bloodsuckers, right? And those are the bloodsuckers who control the 85%. The 85% are the ones who are the deaf, dumb, and blind. And then you got the 1%, the 5%, who are the ones that's trying to revitalize everything. So that's that's what's taking place when it comes to that. Yep.
Yeah, that's deep. And shout out to Chief Fox Owl. You know what? And the one that I saw, I don't remember seeing a lot of females, but in my vision or in that experience, but it was mostly men. But I wasn't able to see everybody in the room based upon where I was standing during that visitation. So I can't say that there were not females. I can't say that I could clearly see or make out any. I saw mostly men, but the room was so big and so vast, like I couldn't see everybody in there, especially like their faces too. So just to kind of share that experience with your Chief Fox Owl, but it definitely was a dope experience. It was amazing. I was honored just to be able to get a glimpse of it, to be honest with you. So it was something extremely powerful that I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in my real, and in the physical reality with my eyes, my two physical eyes, but it was powerful.
They also got that the black one. There was a white guy. He said that the great majority of the mermaids, they're actually black women. He said they look just like black women, up to about tall mermaids.
I'm not surprised because that episode was dope too. The one you did when you was talking about the mermaids and how that dude, I forgot his name, the one that was orchestrating that organization that was going out there hunting them and all that foolishness. But that was a dope show because there was a lot of stuff. I knew about a little bit of that, but not nowhere near as deep as you went into it. I have never done that much research on the mermaids and mermen, especially to the fact where you had the receipts showing people talking about how real this is and what they're doing, which is barbaric and sinister and sick. And that's why they're dealing with some of the stuff they're dealing with now by, like attacking these sacred beings, because even like the dolphins and the whales and, they're all connected, to that higher frequency, to that higher, vibrational frequency in those fifth dimension type of civilization. So it's like when you start attacking, those beings who are pretty much guardians to the planet, you're going to deal with some consequences. You're going to deal with major consequences. You know what I mean? So that's crazy. Let me see. I got a couple more questions. Let me see. Kashida has one. She says it would be great for Bdell to teach the young ones in ways they can understand more of them or having experiences they can't necessarily go to their parents with. Yeah, it's a lot of that going on. But you know what? That's why we had these podcasts too, Kashida, because we definitely want to put the information out there for as many people who want access to it or that can get access to it, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But do you have anything you would like to share with Kashida on that comment?
It's one of those things where I tell people, like, before you step into information and knowledge and try to alchemize it in a form of enlightenment, you got to do the work first. You got to do the healing first. So because when you heal, that's when you dematerialize the blockages in the brain to where you're able to absorb the information and compartmentalize your downloads. So that's why I say, this is why we have a lot of spiritual psychosis in the spiritual community, because a lot of people are not healing. So this is the process. You got to go through the trauma, you heal, then you tap into your authenticity, which leads you to your purpose. So it's one of those things where we got to heal first before we start, stepping into information. And you can only do that by, transmutation, alchemizing your situation. So the energy that you was putting in that was keeping you at a low vibrational state, this transmuted in doing some type of self-affirming practices, reading, working out. So that's what the youth has to understand, especially like young so-called black men. We have to learn to control our emotions. Right? We have to have that vibration of stoicism. So much to the point where you have emotions, but you don't let it weaponize you. You don't let it control you. So much to the point where it don't look like you have emotions, because you only using it in an intelligent aspect of it. That's why I said that we must be sentimental, not emotional. The word mental is in there for a reason.
That's facts. Shout out to LeJohn McGoldrick for the super chat donation. We appreciate you, family. That's real. So real quick, I know we running close on time. I want to get a couple of other comments addressed, because I did see some. I was trying to get back to as many comments as I could throughout the week, but someone did ask me, I think it was yesterday, about the Stone Mountain event. Do you know if Brother Rich or whoever's like affiliated with putting on the program, if they've gotten like the flyers or anything to start promoting that yet? Because I did see somebody.
He's putting out a flyer this week.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so family, that whoever that was that asked, I did want to make sure I asked that for you, because I remember saying something to you in the comments. So we'll definitely, once Brother Bdell gets it, I'll definitely share it here too for those who are interested in coming. to the Stone Mountain gathering, because I definitely feel like it's going to be some very, very powerful energy going on up there, man.
We need to try to get as much people there because there's a dark Luciferian energy in Atlanta. You know, there's a lot of, you know, European Luciferians, and they do a lot of sacrifices on Stone Mountain. They just found a body 8 a.m. yesterday on top of Stone Mountain. So that's why yeah. So that's why I said it's imperative for our people right now to, you know, utilize these energies that's coming in. The Schumann resonance is spiking up. That's not happening for a reason. So this is why I said we are basically the epitome of the black sun when we all come together. So when we come together, that's going to leave a certain energetic imprint in the ethers, and it's going to reverse the polarity of the negative frequencies that they was using to do these incantations at, you know, places like, you know, Stone Mountain. You know what I'm saying? Just us being there and having a certain frequency and consciousness, that's going to manipulate whatever type of algorithm that they have in that landmass. You get what I'm saying? So, you know, we're not only fighting on the physical aspect, we're fighting on a spiritual level too. So that's what this is all about. So, you know what I'm saying? I'm talking about like, we would like to have thousands, you know, 5,000 people there. You know, it's a free. So it's one of those things where, you know, you got all these energies in. So we got to come together. You know what I'm saying? Even if it's just something that's, you know, minuscule as, you know, going on a hike or some type of, you know, excavation or whatever. This is the time to do it. It's the sun. We're in solar cycle 25.
Yeah.
Why you think, you know what I'm saying, like you get so many black people in a room and start to heat up? Now, what do you think is going to happen? Because we're coming out of the summer solstice, you know what I'm saying, on June 21st. Then that next week is June 28th. So like I said, that energy is still going to be on the planet.
Yeah.
That's why, you know what I'm saying, because this is why, you know, during the time when we had the shutdown, why you think they wanted us to stand, you know, 9 feet apart, 9 inches apart or whatever? They were trying to separate us because that's why they was naming the draconian juice right after sun frequencies. People weren't getting sick because of the draconian juice. They was getting sick because their genetics wasn't harmonized with the vibration of the sun. So it made them sick. And this is why they didn't want to be around each other. So the more that the sun intensifies and bring these neutrinos and these piezoelectrical frequencies to the planet, is going to cause another form of pestilence on the planet. Because, like I said, the frequency radiation doesn't harmonize with the G-force of the epidermis layer of the skin of the European. So, like I said, you know, it's not, you know, everybody got different forms of genetics, but it depends on what type of blood type you come from. That's why everybody's not the same, which denotes the fact that we got different blood types. So if you got different blood types, there's a different species. There's a supreme species and there's a lower species. And you can tell by the A and the B antigens of, you know, of our DNA sequence or whatever. But like I said, it's good for us during this time period for us to come around and, you know, and manipulate the ethers and alchemize. You know, for, you know, the law of attraction. You can attract just, you know what I'm saying, like us, you know, congregating together, dialoguing, you know, amongst each other. You know what I'm saying? That's what it's about. Yeah.
We got another tribe member that said anything about England. Is there any like land masses or landmarks or, you know, spots that's popping where things are kind of percolating and elevating over there in England?
Well, you're gonna have a lot of smart cities in England because that's where the beginning points of the fall of the corporation starts with, because the Federal Reserve System. And that's one of the 3 city states that controls the corporation. So that's why the Queen, the seal is off Buckingham Palace, right? And you just had the Pope. The Pope was the personification of the king. So when you're looking at, you know, the chess piece of the king, it looks just like the hat of Dagon on certain chess, you know, games that you play or whatever. It looks just like the sigil system of it. So when you have the fall of the king and the queen, that's the fall of the corporation. The game is really over. It's just up to us, you know what I'm saying, to where when the planet goes through a state of metamorphosis, are we going to galvanize our resources in the form of reconstruction to build this shit right back up, you know, to the matriarch like it's supposed to be?
And that's big facts, because without us having that balance, it's not gonna happen. And that goes into something we can get into in another episode about how, how the strategic strategy to, you know, dissipate and eliminate the familial structure, especially in our community. You know what I mean? Because you know that without that strong home foundation, you know, it really does deteriorate a lot of the other aspects of who and what you are when you're faced, you know, with the challenges of the world. That's a real thing. And that's why I'm so driven to do, you know, community work, because I know for a fact a major root cause of a lot of the young brothers that's doing a lot of the, you know, crime or doing things like selling drugs or shooting or whatever is because they don't have any positive male presence. You know what I mean? Like, they have a male presence, but they're seeing it on the block, or they're seeing it on TV, or they're seeing it in the music videos, or they're hearing it, you know what I'm saying, in the music. So it's like they don't have anybody to show them that you could be a real brother, but be positive and do positive work too. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's where I'm driven to want to do that, because we got to be able to flip the narrative and like transform the paradigm within the mind. You know what I mean? Because that's how we really can start to make things happen when we see putting together familial structures and units. Like, I couldn't be more proud of the brothers that I know personally that are my age, from 44, 45 years of age down to your age and even younger, who are doing their thing as a father. Like, there's nothing that makes me more proud than to see all these brothers who are doing their thing as a father and in their children's lives, whether they're married to the woman or, you know, they're together with the mother or not, they're still doing their thing and holding down their role as a father. And I couldn't be more proud than that, because a lot of people who grew up with 80s babies, 70s babies, you know, 90s babies didn't have that. You know what I mean? So now we're also working on putting that back together as well. So I love it, man. I'm here for all of it.
Same. That's what it's all about. It starts in the household. The man's the law, the woman is the order. And if the woman is out of order, the whole civilization is out of order. And when the whole civilization is out of order, the whole universe is out of order. And what put the woman out of order? Patriarchy, the moon, energy of the moon. That's what we call the sleep spell of King Gu. So when the woman get from under the sleep spell, that's when she's able to resurrect the black man, to where she's able to give orders to the man, and he's able to lay down the law. That's what's going to create the balance.
Yes, sir. That's facts. Shout out to Brother Dre Mills for the super chat, man. We appreciate you. He said Brother Bdell was Dr. Freeman's son. I don't understand that question. Are you familiar with what he might be?
Dr. Freeman, I thought, is he a Freemason?
I'm not sure. Brother Dre, if you could repost your text or your comments.
Is Dr. York a Freemason? I think that's what he is asking.
I'm not sure. Maybe. Well, if that is the question.
Lose a little bit. I'm just using it off that.
Yeah, and if you could shoot your comment, Brother Dre, before we log off, I'll bring it back to the forefront. I appreciate the donation too, family. But yeah, so real quick, because I know we're running close to the time, we got to wrap up. Do you want to? Okay, yeah, it was. Okay, so here it goes, bro. So yeah, he was saying it was Dr. York a Mason.
We all are Masons. Look at your hand. You got him right there for a reason. 306 degrees of the physical, 306 degrees of the spiritual. You put them both together, that's 720 degrees of knowledge. 7 plus 2 plus 0 equals 9. That's 9 ether. So like I said, all are Masons, but you're not a Freemason. It's kind of like the delineation process when you have a Ooish Persian and a Oud. Like I said, just by who we are as indigenous people, because we are the ones who built this land. We are the ones that belong to the land. So it even tells you, I think it's in a Oriental Freemason book. It's an Oriental Masonic book. It tells you that the true Masons are the melanated people, the indigenous people. It's not the European. This is why Europeans, they under the Hiram Abiff, and so this is why they got the sword on their fez, and it's tacked down with different you're not supposed to put symbols or whatever on your fez because it's a sign of deviancy. You're not supposed to fez.
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt either, but it's funny. I always wondered about that. I wasn't quite sure why their fairs looked different. You're talking about like the Shriners and all them, right?
Yeah, because you notice, like I said, Hiram Abiff, they under the sword. The reason they under the sword because that's who the one that they took orders from. That's who was above them. And that's when you get into the blackamoors and the black nobility. They under the sword because the sword is a representation of a katana. A katana is a sigil of the moon. So they under the moon energy. That's why all forms of monotheistic religion corresponds with the moon and Saturn. That's what keeps you boxed in mentally and spiritually.
I say. Yeah, that's dope. I got one last quick one before we get out. I know it's about that time. So where was it? I think they said can't wait until this ish completely fall too. The moon fall too. So do you know anything about anything like that as far as the moon falling or being removed out of this solar system based upon it was something that was told in anyway?
Yeah, because I told you, I've told people once before, is that the moon is actually it's a draconian mothership. It's a draconian mothership that has a supercomputer, and that supercomputer is controlling the gematria system because everything in a simulation is mathematical. Everything works on the frequencies of numbers. So when you look at the matrix, the sigil of it, the numbers, the zeros and the ones, the zero is the embodiment of dark matter energy, but the one represents photon. And that photon is created when you're able to bend light photons, which is subatomic particles, which gives you the illusion of physical reality. So that's why I said the moon is working off a holographic projection of what you call the magneto-hydrodynamic Cassini gaps on the rings of Saturn. So that's why, like I said, they call it the Saturn moon matrix, because they use the moon as a catalyst to project the energies that mimics the energy or the perception of planet Earth, basically. So that's why when you look at the moon, sometimes it's basically corresponding with the geographical layout of the world. Basically, it's a projection that is operating off fractions of light that's connected to the rings of Saturn.
Yes, sir. That's deep. And I'm sharing the cash apps in the comments. Alchemist Couture, babe. We appreciate you, the love, support, cash apps, everything. We appreciate all the love and support, family. So I know we got to roll out and wrap it up, bro. So real quick, do you want to share anything? I know you got a couple things you got popping coming up. I'm thinking like this week or whatever. So if you want to plug anything that you got popping, that you got going before we get back to it, man, it's all yours. And I definitely, do what I could do to put it out there.
Okay, yeah, I'm still working on my book. I still got stuff coming up with Yaki this week. And also, I'm going to be at Stone Mountain on June 28th. And I got some other things in the works or whatever. I got the Knowledge Fest in Louisville, Kentucky. I think that's around in August. So I got a lot of stuff that's going on. I'm not going to be going to the Quantum Fest in Houston. So I'm not going to be going to that due to, because I got full custody of my son. So I got to, transmutate that energy, to something else. So yeah, that's pretty much my layout for everything that I got going on that's coming up.
Ashe. Oh, no, I appreciate it, man.
I got it, I'm eventually going to put another video out too. So, and then we also got me, you and Rod coming up June 6th, right?
Yeah, boy. Listen, I was going to share that too, but look, I just locked it in with the big chief right before we jumped on here today. So we look, me, you, and Big Rod, we're gonna do it the big three-way. We ain't the Miami Heat, but we're gonna bring that heat.
Okay.
So yeah, we're gonna have.
We gonna bring the ether.
Hey, look! I was studying and reading notes during the Bdell show. So yeah, we're gonna bring that 9. Look, that might be the title of it, the big three.
I got that in my tablet.
Oh man,
I ain't got the actual physical publication. I got it as PDF, so I got it on my computer and I got it on my tablet. It's a great book,
bro. Their whole series is great. You done turned me on to something because I didn't know they had it on the PDF. But I don't know I got the whole series, but I sure got quite a few of them because I got that one. I got let me see. I got the science of technology and the science of sciences, science in sciences, the Pata technology.
I got that one too.
Yeah. So hey, y'all, family, check out African Creation Energy. I
got some other books too. Hold on.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, y'all check out African Creation Energy because they definitely got some dope, powerful books, man. Powerful books. I've been on their stuff probably. I can't even remember how long it's been. It's been at least, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years or more. I've been rocking with their publications. So yeah, they got a lot of the stuff that we talk about on the channel, family. You can find in that African Creation Energy series. They definitely dropped.
I ain't got my other book. All my books is at my other house. I ain't got my other books.
Yeah, it's all good. Look, and it's another thing I need to do too is like start doing like maybe book lists or book recommendations because I like to share a lot of books. When I do the shows, just for so people can get receipts from where a lot of this information comes from because this isn't something that I just started doing. I've been studying all this work since 14, man. So it's like I'm like you. I have been quiet all these years, and I would just talk to people in regular conversations, and only when they asked about certain stuff, because I've never been that type to kind of try to force my thoughts or views or visions on anybody else, you know what I'm saying? But if you ask me, I'm gonna give you what I got, but I ain't finna run up on you, you know what I'm saying, trying to preach to you. That ain't how I move. But I do give thanks and gratitude for the alignment of being able to now share all this information that I've been researching and studying, and kind of like just taking and putting it into my vault, man, and now being able to align with brothers such as yourself who have the same, you know what I mean, same passion and the same, I feel like the same path in regards to the work that you've been doing with being a student, of metaphysics and a student of knowledge. So understanding, overstanding, understanding, and understanding. So with that, I give thanks to you, bro. I ain't gonna hold you up because I know you got to make some moves, but I definitely appreciate you, brother. I definitely salute you and keep on praising the work that you're doing over there at the Bdell 1014 channel, as well as on Instagram. And man, keep doing what you do. And shout out to the tribe, shout out to the family for all the love and support. We definitely appreciate each and every single one of y'all. And yeah, you got anything else before we shut it down?
Well, we can still. I still got room for a couple more questions.
Okay. Well, shoot.
A couple more questions.
Well, look, you ain't got to tell me twice. Yeah. Look, but be careful now, because look, I'm gonna tell you like I told brother. I speaking with brother Sifu Oyisun. We was talking about the shrooms and all that. He was like, man, I can keep going. I said, be careful, boy. I said, because we'll be here all night messing around on the trial. They will stay and keep going. So you got to be careful what you say, because they're gonna bring them to you now. You can shoot. So but man, so I got some more I did put to the side to bring up. So shout out to brother Raheem Young. He said, do we black folks get superpowers or nah?
See, that's what I'm talking about. You gotta heal first. How you gonna tap into your power, you know what I'm saying, and you ain't did the work yet? See, this is why you got villains in superhero movies, right? The reason, like I said, once you get the power, you're gonna weaponize the information. You're going to weaponize the knowledge. You're going to weaponize your spiritual power because you haven't healed yet. So it's one of those things where, like I said, we have to get away from, escapism. You know what I'm saying? Like, we all want to hear about the Anunnaki and superpowers and things of that nature, but we have to be very practical about our approach when it comes to spirituality. You're not going to tap into nothing if you're not healing, because when you unheal, that's going to put blockages in the meridian points of the body. You're not going to receive those transmissions. You're not going to receive those downloads. So, like I said, the best way to, heal, just on an energetic level, on a physical level, get massages, be gentle with yourself, sit in the steam room, go in the sauna. Once you heal mentally, physically, and spiritually, that's when you open yourself up to those doorways to get access to certain information to where you tap into those so-called powers. But you got to heal first.
Yeah, that's real. That goes back to what I was sharing too. Like, people that I feel like in the Ishe, Ifa, Orisha tradition. I was sharing about that on another episode, where I feel like some people will get initiated before doing the healing. Like, but we got to work on doing the healing, because once you go through those ceremonies and those processes, which is extremely powerful, everything is not torn away or gotten rid of, or, like ripped apart off of you during that transformation process. So it's like you really want to do the deep dive on healing and cleansing as much as possible before you go into that sort of transformation, because then what can happen is you can bring in the magnified level of both energies, whether it's the positive light energy or the negative dark energy that's trying to pretty much block you from elevating into that next phase. And that's something that not only myself can attest to, but I even have like clients that I work with who it's been a challenge just to get certain ceremonies done, because so many different roadblocks or so many different hurdles will try to come up into the way to block those ceremonies happening. But what I always share in regards to like reassurance is that you have to be focused and patient, because just as you're elevating your light body and you're elevating your frequency to a much higher level, especially when you have some of these sacred ceremonies done, the dark forces who are trying to use you as a host, as a parasitical energy or entity, they're also going to try to elevate and ramp up their attempts to block you and hold you down from getting to that pinnacle, from getting to the top of that mountain, from getting from the third to the fifth, from getting, from the root to the crown like chakra. So it's like, we got to elevate with, the forces that are guiding us. And like the Star Wars thing, we got to be the Jedi, you know what I mean? Like, we got to make sure that we're able to utilize everything that we have to immerse ourselves in the healing process. So that way, once we do go through these ceremonies, then we're now activating like Bruce Leroy with that green energy. You know what I mean? Like that cube behind you.
And then on top of that, like I said, it also corresponds with the dietary system. You know, see, you got to understand why the great majority of these genetically modified foods, they have nanotechnology. And then nanotechnology in itself has the ability to hide itself and mimic human behavior that is connected to the parasites. So this is why, like I said, when you go in hospitals or whatever, they always give you more sugar, right? They give you more glucose. They give you more starch. That's blood. Because that's when the parasite is able to replicate themselves. That's connected to the nanotechnology and is able to feed off the red blood cells, right? It's basically, you know, it replicates itself by feeding off the DNA sequence. So glucose and starch is what, you know, makes parasites replicate themselves in the body.
Wow. So what would you recommend as a natural holistic approach in regards to people who use like natural? Are there any natural sweeteners or any natural, you know, anything that we could use can kind of replace the sugar and the glucose out of our diet, so we don't allow those parasites to continue to grow and to, you know, kind of replicate themselves?
Stuff like dragon fruit, antioxidants and stuff like that. Antioxidants, chlorophyll, cleansing the blood, magnesium, because it was up one point of time on the planet, you know, when we had magnesium-based blood, to where we was able to tap into cell growth proliferation. So magnesium-based blood, the reason we can't tap into that energy is because, you know, we have, you know, the blood cells is dematerializing because of, you know, oxygen, because of the oxidation. It breaks down the hemoglobin cellular structure to the point where it starts the aging process, right? So like I said, when you're able to, you know, tap into, you know, magnesium and all these blood, you know, revitalizers, whatever, that's what's going to create immortalized cell lines, which is a form of cell growth proliferation.
Yes, sir. And shout out to Ashe 9 Affirmations. Yeah, there's a couple of books I could recommend to you on getting some of those answers. Ashe 9. So one of the ones you could look up is it's called Dreams, Images, and Symbols, and that's by the author's name is Kevin J. Todeshi. It's Kevin J. Todeschi. That's one of them that I use, and the other one I use is called The Dreamer's Dictionary from A to Z, and that author is I think Lady Stern Robinson and Tom Gorbett. So those are like two books that one of my elders gave me to use, like to kind of interpret and to define, you know, dreams in regards to us when we have dreams, especially vivid lucid dreams, that we want to kind of look up the symbolism, because a lot of the times when we have dreams, it's not whatever we see or experience or what happens in the dream is not a direct correlation to things that are happening in the same way or wavelength in the physical realm. So you definitely want to take the time to research it to see exactly what it is, the message that spirit is trying to reveal to you, so that way you can kind of get the clarity on it and not be concerned or worried about if something happens in a dream, you think it might translate to real life. Because a lot of times, I don't think I've ever seen whatever the dream was actually mean the same thing in the real world ever, in all the times that I've done that. So that's what I would do. I recommend those two books to you. You can find both of them on Amazon as well. And I'll try to get
a lot of your dreams sometimes are past life experiences. That's why sometimes when you be looking in a dream, it'd be like, this happened, but I wasn't in a dream. Yeah, it was you in a different life form in your past life. And it was showing you what took place and what you got to heal from. That's what happens a lot of times in our dreams. That's why sometimes you see certain people and you be like, why was that person in my dream? Or why was I looking through the lens of somebody else's life? You know what I'm saying? So that's what happens sometimes. And a lot of times dreams, like, you know, you're supposed to write them down. Especially if they're really good ones. If they're really good ones, you always want to write your dreams down and you put it underneath a pillow. You put teeth underneath there. You're supposed to you write down your affirmations. You put, you know, all your affirmations in your dreams. You put them underneath your pillow.
And another thing too, family.
Write with a pencil.
Got you. And another thing too, family, you can keep a glass of clear water, you know, on the side of your bed as well. That can kind of help clear up a lot of energy and give you clarity during the dream state. And then another thing, if you really want, especially those who are in the realm or in the space of ancestral veneration or communicating with your ancestors, even if you're talking or communicating with your ancestors, even people who are brand new to that path that don't even have an ancestral shrine, ask them for a sign. Like ask your ancestors for a sign before you go into a meditation or before you go into a prayer, and then ask them for the sign that's going to make sense to you as well. So you'll know it and you'll get it. It'll connect with you. So that way you're not confused, because that's another way you can literally get clarity. You can get answers. You can get, downloads from the ethers, from the etheric forces of nature, and from our ancestors who are in the ancestral realm. So that's another way that you can kind of, take prayer and meditation to another level by tapping in and asking your ancestors to show you a sign or to give you clarity on whatever it is that you're trying to, work through.
And another thing about those dreams, be careful of eating or talking to entities in your dream. Everything in the spirit world is telepathic. You know, and then they even, when you get into, some of the esoteric mythologies, they tell you in order to escape, the matrix, you got to create a sigil. Your sigil is how you escape. Because like I said, it's going to denote the fact that, you're pulling information for the subconscious mind. So the epikinetic body is how you leave this realm. That's the macabre. That's when you tap into those powers. So you can leave this matrix if you remember the sigil. Everything within the simulation operates on signs and symbols. So you got to create a symbol or a sigil for yourself, and you use it as a portal. That's how you do that. Symbols and sigils are portals, but you got to create your own to escape.
Brother Dre wants to know. He said, "Brother Bdell, I love your intro and outro songs. Are they available for purchase?"
No, I got one. The intro is on my YouTube for free. We don't. I'm not gonna make you purchase those. Just it's just I'll put the outro up, eventually, but they're for free. That's
what's up. Who's the artist on it? He remind me of 3000 a little bit. Remind me of Dre 3 Stack.
One guy, his name is Hola Sheeple. I don't think he makes videos no more. And there's another guy. He actually lives like around my area.
Okay.
And he made that song some years ago. And
Striving for Greatness.
Yeah, no. Striving for Greatness is Hola Sheeple.
Oh, okay.
And, the other one was from a guy from where I live at.
I got you. Yeah, no, they dope. I definitely dope.
The Land by Bangara Smooth.
That's what's up. Yeah, we got a couple more. And here we go. Spiritual high. Yeah, that's real. Alchemist, like that's a real thing, for real too. Because all that plays a role in how things unfold, like how things happen. Because at the end of the day, even if you're a person who don't get tangled up into drama and chaos and back and forthness with all a lot of people or whatever, you still want to keep that spiritual hygiene, because the karmic, I can't speak to anybody else, but what I see with people, like the karmic pendulum is swinging at a rapid rate right now, boy. So if you go out and you out there going out your way to make things miserable for somebody, or you doing some dirty shit, or you hating or just doing anything negative intentionally to people, it's gonna come back real fast. I seen it in traffic. A dude cut me off one day, and I was almost ready to turn up on him, but I was able to calm myself down. And I promise you, within a minute and a half, or maybe even less, me driving behind, somebody cut him off the same way he did me. I couldn't do nothing but laugh. I'm like, damn, I'm glad I did keep my cool, boy. Because, boy, that karma came back fast, boy.
Yeah, because energy transfer is real, bro, because, like, this is why it's imperative, for so-called Black women to get away from street dudes. You see a lot of spiritual women. You see a lot of women who is in corporate America, a lot of women who graduated college. They always mess with hood dudes, right? So when you understand energy, the transmutation process, that man's demons can become yours. There was a young lady, she was a college graduate and everything, but she was in the street dudes. She went out of town on a trip with the dude, and because of his demons or whatever, she ended up getting killed. You know what I'm saying? Like you can be a great person, but you around negative energy, those are automatically your demons by proxy. So that's why I said a lot of people around you are manifestation blockers. You got to get away from certain people because they're gonna hold you back.
Yes.
Right. But that's why I said, like, the so-called Black woman is under the sleep spell. The spell of materialism, the moon, the one that created everything in existence. When you're talking about this simulation. Right. That's why I said when she's able, a lot of women cater to those individuals because, like I said, they're able to provide from a economic standpoint to where they got resources. So women, the dismantlement, happened is because, the great majority of our demographic are economically disenfranchised.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So now the black woman, she's looking for other men, and she don't care if she did a white man, she don't care if she did a drug dealer, she just wants somebody to pay them damn bills. So like I said, it's the sleep spell of materialism. So you got to get away from these energies that's holding you down. Mm-hmm. Get away from the drug dealer. I don't care about how much money he make, but like I said, eventually, if you keep messing with that nigga, his demons is gonna become yours. That's energy transmutation. You could be on the spiritual path all you want, but you still with a demon.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's so real, and that's something that I speak to the young kings about all the time, man, about who you surround yourself with, because what they say, your network determines your net worth. Yeah, that's true too, but also you got to also know that, you have to be able to differentiate your assets versus liabilities, because you got some people who, they might be in the streets or and you, like, for example, okay, shout out to this is a real life story. Ibatu knew to a brother named Kwame Doster, who I grew up with, right? So he was a phenomenal student athlete, phenomenal student in high school, phenomenal student in college, and he went to Vanderbilt University. And he came home for Christmas break one year, and I had just seen him like the weekend before at a Christmas party, and so we went to the following week. I think it was Christmas night, actually. Y'all can look it up too. It'll pull up if you Google football player murdered on Christmas in Tampa. But anyway, he went out, hung out with some homeboys that night, Christmas Eve night. They went to the club. The brothers was from the hood or whatever, was beefing with some other brothers. So everybody used to go to this spot called Gyros as the hangout spot, like the after hour spot, kind of like Waffle House in the A, or other spots up there or whatever. But the beef kind of continued from the club to the spot, man, and the brothers just opened up, started busting. They busted, sprayed the whole car up, and the only person who got hit in that car was the one who had the future. Like, this brother was an all SEC, special teams player. I think he was an all SEC running back. He had a bright future. He was on his way to the league. He could have transformed generations for his family. And he was the only person that got hit out of all those bullets that were sprayed in the car. And everybody else was pretty much in the streets. So it's like the one person who had the bright future, who I would assume had the clearest karma, was the one who got taken out. So it's like, if he could do it over again, I'm very positive that he would not either have not gone out that night, or he definitely wouldn't have rolled with those same group of people. You know what I mean? So it's like, who we surround ourselves on top of who we're in relationships with has a major role into how our life, unfolds, especially when you're talking about assets and liabilities, because a lot of people are rolling with liabilities. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm either going to roll solo or I'm going to roll with assets, but I ain't trying to take on no damn liabilities in regards to people who I rock with. That's real.
Right. Some people have a death frequency on them. Have you ever looked at somebody? I have this ability sometimes. I remember it was a long time ago. It was probably about maybe 5 years ago, right around the time when they had the first Juneteenth. It was a young man. He every time he was in the streets, what I'm saying, and every time he seen me, what I'm saying, he give me gratitude, always asking me about stuff. But I already knew he was going to end up, what I'm saying, being unalived eventually, what I'm saying, the circumstance. But like I said, you can tell when certain people have a death frequency on them.
Yeah,
I can feel it, and I can see it every time. And it's one of those things where, it's like, and I'll be right every time about it. And the same thing happened to another girl. I'm talking about this one girl, I used to date her. I went to prom with her, and, we fell out of contact. You know what I'm saying? I ain't heard from this girl in years. But the day she died, I already knew something was going to happen to her eventually, because, what I'm saying, of what she's, connected to, what I'm saying, and whatever, she ended up, moving to Atlanta and stripping in Magic City and things of that nature. And she fell victim to a certain lifestyle. But the night that she died, she called me that night. I'm talking about, I ain't heard from this individual in like years. You know what I'm saying? And it's one of those things where a lot of people, right before they, pass away, I'm always one of the last people they talk to. That's happened to me about 5 times. I always thought that was weird. Like, I'm talking about, like, it's either the next day or 2 days later. Yep. I can't hear you. You on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I had to call. I muted the mic, forgot to unmute it. But yeah, I've experienced that way too many times that I would care to talk about, man, because my personal past, I came up, in a way that I knew I had to get out of, and I give thanks and gratitude that I was able to get myself out of that situation, and out of them streets, man, and not, be tangled up and going to those same places, which is usually 2 exits on that highway. It's either the cemetery, prison, and that, for real though, and I've seen it too many times, so it's like, it's something that I know we can change and transform from, but it's something that it definitely is something that needs to be done as soon as possible, because like I said, that karmic pendulum is swinging at a rapid rate these days and times. I feel like it's all in divine alignment with what the planet is doing with the elevation of the vibrational frequency. So it's like, you can't be out here slinging around BS and thinking everything gonna be sweet, because it ain't going like that no more, because the same things that we're talking about getting rid of these parasites who have been controlling and manipulating the realities of us, that's a whole, like, this is a whole universal construct. This ain't just, a black white thing. It is in essence in some ways, but this is a universal thing where your frequency got to elevate and it got to rise with the rest of the solar system and the planet, or else your liberty to be out of here. You know what I mean? Because it's a real energy, vibrational frequency thing. So it's real. It's definitely
some people, like I said, I call it the spirit of confusion, because a double mind is a confused mind. And when you're confused, that means that you're disconnected from your inner child. You're not connected to source. And that's going to expose your aura. So a lot of times when I come across individuals like that, they had that death aura on them. Like I'd be right every time. And I'd be like, damn, I was like, it's crazy, because I always knew this person was going to end up, unalive, and I'd be right every time. I don't know. It might just be the power of observation, because observation in itself is how you tap into your telepathic abilities as well. It's an unspoken language. That's why I like to people watch. Sometimes I go to the mall and I just be chilling. I just be watching, and just, people watch, because, there are certain things that people do psychologically that gives them the propensity of, certain reasons why they do certain stuff, so I just kind of just use it as a catalyst.
Yeah. Nah, and the Yoruba tradition, we call those Abiku children. Abiku, Aibku, Abiku children. So these children are children who come into the world, and they come into the world, they're not going to be here for long. That's just pretty much what they do. They come in and out of the world like for short time periods, So I look at like people like Pac or Biggie were kind of like Ibiku children, you know what I'm saying? Because certain people or certain beings, they're only going to come in and be here for a small, short period of time. They're going to return back to the realm of the ancestors or back to their egg base. So that's something that, I definitely feel like that's worthy of a video within its own, an episode or a conversation within its own, because it is a real thing. And so even for those who are in the priestly order, there's certain things that we kind of have to prescribe to clients or people who, we're dealing with, because there's certain different types of things that we have to do for the children to make sure that we give the parents for the children, whether it's putting certain items on them or having certain musical or sound vibrational, frequencies or sound bowl type of musical noises that should be in the presence of that child, or definitely in their crib or in their bed. So that way it can kind of ward off some of those dark, evil spirits, or the spirit of death, which is Iku. So it's like, it's really deep, man, when you talk about some of these things that's happening.
Who got the energy on him? There's a rapper, NBA Youngboy. He has a death aura on him, because like I said, the Abiku children, like I said, they come here for a reason to shift the paradigm, but it depends on what side they own. It's either you messing with the dark forces or the light forces. So a lot of times their time gets cut short because they're acclimated to the evil. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, everybody get the call. So if they would have chose the light, they probably would have had some type of self-preservation on this planet. You know what I'm saying? They didn't fall victim to, being unalive.
Yeah. And shout out to brother Marcus Simmons. He said you're a seer like him. Yeah, you do that. That is a gift though. You have a seer gift. Because I've done that before a couple times and I didn't like it, because I didn't want, I didn't want that to happen and for it to unfold or manifest. But unfortunately, for me, it's almost like I can't block what comes. You know what I mean? Kind of like the story I shared with my cousin. So it's like when these messages come, it's like it's hard to ignore, because some of them, for me personally, they vibrate on a higher frequency, or they're like a louder transmission or emission, of this message. And it's the weirdest thing, because I'm not even going to front. I really cannot figure out a way to describe, and I hope there might be somebody in the audience that might could do it better than me, but how to describe when these messages come, because it's not an audible. It's not like I'm talking to you type of sound, and it's actually not a visual either, but I call it a telepathic text because it's a sense of knowingness, and it is a communication, and it does happen, you know what I mean, frequently too, but there's different ways, and there's different, I feel like different, I guess, stations maybe. And then, you know, some of them are a lot more clearer and louder than others, and some of them are like kind of, you know, faint and not as strong as others. But it's a real sense of knowingness that happens where I feel like they're either outside entities or it's my inner self, and that whole, you know, it's a whole group of people going on crazy stuff going on up in there. But yeah, it's a real thing though, because I know me personally, I've seen it and experienced it. But I do believe you have that too. It's like being a seer, and they call them mediums in the Western, you know, world or whatever. We call them seers, or just people who have the ability to communicate with both realms. You know what I mean, with the physical realm and the spiritual, you know, ancestral realm as well. So
you know about that is, you know, what's crazy is because, you know, I told you when I do my videos first, I always make the thumbnail first.
Yep.
I never formulate my presentations with the information first. I base it, you know, based on what I see. I create the thumbnail, then I get my receipts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's how I always do that. So that lets me know that, like, I have some type of, I'm getting some download somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's put me in alignment. And it's also one of those things where they know that, you know, a lot of series during this time period, especially in Solar Cycle 25, they know a lot of us is going to tap into our power. So there's a thing called the SEER'S. It's called the Severe Intravirus Epidemic Respiratory Syndrome. It's called SEER'S. So the SEER'S, when you look at the introvirus, it looks
I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's like is that like I can call it a disease, but like some sort of like health condition or physical condition or something? Okay, I've heard of that.
Yeah, but they've been talking about it in the World Economic Forum. It's called SEER, but it's called Severe Intravirus Epidemic Respiratory Syndrome. So the introvirus looks just like the emulation of the hexahedron that sits on top of the cube of Saturn. When you look at the prefix of the word hexahedron, is hex, and a hex is a lockdown, a curse. So that hexahedron that's inside the introvirus is being used to lock down the transmission that you're getting from the cosmos. Because I told you, everything that took place with the last shutdown, those were solar frequencies. Wasn't nobody getting sick with no type of pestilence out here. Motherfuckers getting sick because their frequency was too low. Right? So that's just why, like I said, they wanted to get people separated and things of that nature, because like I said, when you have too much neuromelanated energy around, it can create a different energy, a vibration of rejuvenation. It can create, you know, the revitalization process of cells and energy. But yeah, that's what it's for though. Yeah,
it's deep. I appreciate you, Jessica J. I figured it was some sort of telepathy. It's really, you know, for me, it's kind of challenging to kind of, I guess, to describe it, because it's, like I said, it's not a real rhyme or reason in regards to how I can kind of paint the picture for other people to get what I'm saying. So, but I definitely know that it happens and it's real. And shout out to you, Londa. I agree as well. Okay, this is the last one I'm gonna give right here. So shout out to I Am Cosmic Energy. She said, have y'all heard about the X-ray and radio signal flashing towards the Earth every 44 minutes? Have you heard about that?
Yeah, that's the frequency of the Schumann resonance. The Schumann resonance is starting to spike up. It's the heartbeat of planet Earth.
Gotcha. Yep. And you got a video on that too, don't you?
I haven't really did like a deep dive on it, you know, but eventually I'm going to give a definitive synopsis on it.
Okay, because I know I heard it on your channel before too. So, but we'll definitely tap into that, family. You know, matter of fact, maybe we can bring that up on one of our topics for Friday when we had the Big 3 show, man. So appreciate the love. Appreciate you coming through and dropping them bombs again, man. The tribe enjoyed it as much as I did. And we're going to make it do again in about, 5-6 days, man. I'm looking forward to that one for sure.
I appreciate you. And
yes, sir, likewise.
Salute to you and your tribe, and salute to everybody in the comments. I appreciate you guys. You know, you can follow me at Bdell 1014 on YouTube, Bdell 1014 on Instagram, Bright Rice Bay on Facebook.
And I'll share all of your links to the socials and your channel and your Cash App and all that in the show description as well. So, family, we appreciate y'all chopping it up with us, man, making it do what it do. We'll definitely be back this week. Before Friday, I'll have some things cooking up too, but we'll definitely be here Friday with Bdell 1014 and the Big Chief Rod Hayes to do a big show on that Friday, man. So we'll see y'all in a few days. We out, family. So, the African Spirituality Experience. I'm your host, Orisha Gbemi. And please like, share, subscribe. We'll see y'all in the next one. We out. Peace. I'll holler at you, brother Bdell.
All right. Appreciate you, brother.
Yes, sir. Likewise. Peace and blessings, family. We out.
Tẹ́ntẹ́ni takisa ní tàtàn ò bá padà sílé anítìjàkọ ẹja lọ pé eégún mo ṣe nígbẹ́rẹ́ ìpàkọ́. Forsake not your ancestors and praise your